Here's another paper. I have Evolutionary Earth versus Uniformitarianism. I know it's a big word, but it's been around for a while. The obverse of this is catastrophism. I think I can't spell it that well, but this is usually pitted against this. So really fast change and really slow change over many billions of years. But this sort of like misses the whole point of the evolution of the Earth. Evolution of the Earth, the evolutionary Earth, utilizes both of these. It clumps both of these together because some things on the Earth happen catastrophically, and some things happened in a uniform manner over many billions of years. But the mainstream establishment, they take uniformitarianism as being fact, and if anybody questions that, they get ridiculed and blacklisted and ignored. You know, it's not healthy behavior. Um, Anyways, abstract. An alternative worldview of Earth's history is presented to replace outdated uniformitarianism philosophy. I think it was invented in the 1950s, somewhere around there. I have to look it up again. But I'll go ahead and read this out to you and explain my reasoning behind it. In the accepted geology geophysics departments, it is taught that the Earth formed mostly as is, and the processes involved in the formation of the Earth happened very slowly. With these two assumptions in place, the former being less rational, the idea that Earth could not have possibly been much larger, or even comprised of matter in much higher energy states, which is observed in outer space, is overlooked. Now, higher energy states, I mean gas giants, and I mean hot stars like the sun. Those are brand new Earths, okay? They're really young. They haven't differentiated enough. They haven't combined a lot of molecules yet. They're too hot for life. Too hot, too energetic. Life is very volatile. It's very delicate. You know, you need something that's just right in almost in many different regards, such as gravitational field being really small. It has to be cool, but not too cold. You know, it has to have the right amount of pressure. But anyways, to a good rule of thumb for this, I remember when I was starting to learn what former means, former and latter. So if you have a statement, the former, you think of like the F comes first and the latter comes second. So by saying former, it would be the former would be taught that the Earth formed mostly as is. That's the first statement. And then the latter would be processes involved happen very slowly. Now, the problem with this is that if you have Earth forming mostly as is, you don't have an evolutionary standpoint. You don't have an object that changed very in very large amounts. You have an object where it was just, boom, it formed, and then it just stayed the same size forever, you know? So that's their philosophy. This is really bad, because guess what? You mean to tell me rocks just clump together for no reason at all? It just was like that, and then bam, it was like that in a few hundred years, or 1,000 years, or a million years. There had to be something to form this object. It just didn't appear because of gravity alone clumping rocks together. That's a very poor explanation. And I have here, conversely, if we observe outer space, we shall see that there are vast amounts of very bright objects consisting of plasmatic and gaseous matter. It is much more reasonable to assume that Earth was one of those objects at one point, as they are actually observed, as opposed to assuming giant rocky differentiated bodies just clumped together absent heat, pressure, and refractory material, which is heat blocking material, to melt down iron, nickel, in the vast amounts hypothesized to exist in the core. As well, the heat of the Earth can also be explained as being the leftover heat of the Earth's evolutionary timeline. So, Venus being much older and no longer evolving. I gotta correct that, no longer evolving. But evolutionary timeline. I put that there because leftover heat, when you usually read articles like this, leftover heat, what they'll do is say leftover heat from Earth's formation. And that's the whole point of this. You either look at the Earth as either forming in very short amounts of time, or you can take the evolutionary standpoint and realize the Earth had evolved greatly to its current configuration. And here I have, it is much more reasonable to assume that Earth is the end result of very long stretches of time, which involve thousands of different types of chemical combination reactions, thermochemistry, electrochemistry, biological, and even reactions such as grain growth and nucleation of matter before any type of rock cycle could even take place. That's talking about crystals and granite and things like that. It is therefore made clear that uniformitarianism does not work as a main geological principle. Taking an evolutionary stance of Earth inside of the theory, which includes it as an end result of star evolution, is much more reasonable and is based on unmistakably sound observation. Gas giants found by the WISE telescope, brown dwarfs found by the WISE telescope, and the hundreds of billions of stars observed in the galaxy. The theory which strives to explain this is stellar metamorphosis. But as you can see here, what's happening now is that we not only have to change the way we look at the Earth, but we have to change the way we look at the stars in general. We have to view them all as being evolutionary. Not only Earth, but Neptune, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Mars and Mercury and Venus are still sort of evolving, but they're mostly dead. They're mostly like into black dwarf stages. But the fact is that these objects are still evolving. They're still changing. They're still forming stuff in the central regions of it and differentiating themselves. And that's the whole point, because when you look up these objects, there's no evolutionary models for them. Everything that they have inside of the astronomy departments and astrophysics departments has everything revolving around the sun. You just clump all these together with a big disk, and then you have your main object, which holds the most importance, and everything else is just the leftover remains of this forming. And that's not the correct way of looking at the stars. The correct way is realizing that these objects are all mutually exclusive of one another, and they all have their own histories, and they all have their own evolutionary timelines. And that's the whole point of stellar metamorphosis. So let's discard these two. I mean, you don't have to exactly discard them completely, but you can realize that it takes time for a lot of things to happen, and some things can happen very quickly. You're going to have both. But these are supposed to be underneath this main concept, the fact that the Earth is an evolutionary construct or object. It didn't form just as is inside of the geological philosophy. But all right, today is February 11th, 2016.